The silence was deafening, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. But inside me, a hurricane. They raised their glasses, toasting to my downfall, their laughter echoing across the manicured lawn. The champagne they were drinking, paid for with my tears, with my future. I stood there, a ghost in my own life, the salt spray mirroring the devastation in my soul, knowing that the life I had painstakingly built had just crumbled to ash. They thought they had won. They were wrong. If you do anything to protect your family, subscribe now and become part of our story. My name is Charlotte, and until a few weeks ago, I lived a life most people only dream of. I wasn't born into wealth, far from it. My parents worked tirelessly, sacrificing everything to provide for my brother, Daniel, and me. When they were tragically taken from us in an accident, I was just 21, still finding my way. They left behind a modest estate, but the bulk of their assets was tied up in a trust fund, designed to provide for our future. Daniel, being the elder, was initially put in charge, with the understanding that the funds were to be used responsibly for our shared benefit. He presented himself as the grieving older brother, the responsible one who would honor our parents' memory. He spoke of investments, of securing our futures, of making them proud. I was young, naive, and reeling from the loss. I trusted him implicitly. I signed the papers he put in front of me without question, blinded by grief and the comforting illusion of security he so carefully constructed. For years, things seemed to be going well, at least on the surface. Daniel would provide regular updates, detailing the fund's performance, reassuring me that we were on solid ground. I focused on my career, building a business from the ground up, pouring my heart and soul into it. I rarely touched the trust, wanting to preserve it for a rainy day, for a time when I might need it most. Daniel, meanwhile, lived a much more lavish lifestyle. He traveled extensively, drove expensive cars, and always seemed to have money to burn. I chalked it up to his savvy investments, to his financial acumen. I never questioned where it all came from. I was too busy, too trusting, too blind to see the truth that was staring me right in the face. He painted a perfect picture, and I foolishly believed it. He even started dating a woman named Bianca, who seemed lovely at first glance, charming and sophisticated. They quickly became inseparable, jet-setting around the world, their adventures plastered all over social media. I was genuinely happy for him, believing he had finally found someone to share his life with. I even started to think of Bianca as a sister. We even went on a few girls' trips together, further cementing our bond. We shared secrets, laughter, and dreams, or so I thought. Then came the invitation. Daniel and Bianca were getting married in Monaco, and it was going to be a grand affair. A week-long celebration, complete with yacht parties, Michelin-star dinners, and a ceremony in a historic villa overlooking the Mediterranean. I was thrilled for them, excited to celebrate their love and to witness their happiness. I even offered to help with the planning, wanting to make their special day even more memorable. But then, a few days before the wedding, I received a call from the bank, a routine inquiry about a large withdrawal from the trust fund. A withdrawal I hadn't authorized. The amount was staggering, an astronomical sum that made my blood run cold, $3.5 million. I immediately contacted Daniel, my voice trembling as I confronted him about the transaction. He was evasive, dismissive, claiming it was a simple misunderstanding, a clerical error that would be sorted out immediately. But I knew deep down that he was lying. I demanded to see the account statements to get a clear picture of what was going on. He stalled, deflected, his excuses growing increasingly thin. Finally, cornered and exposed, he confessed. He admitted to using the money not for investments, not for our shared future, but for his extravagant wedding and honeymoon. He and Bianca had drained the trust fund to finance their lavish lifestyle, leaving me with virtually nothing. He tried to justify his actions, claiming he deserved it, that he had earned it, that I would be fine since I had my business, which he always scoffed at. He even had the gall to say that I should be happy for him, that he was finally living his best life. He said, "Charlotte, you're finished. You will never recover from this." The betrayal was crushing, the realization that the person I trusted most, the person who was supposed to protect me, had so callously betrayed me. My brother. The world swam, my breath hitched. The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering onto the marble floor of my hotel room. Monaco, the epitome of glamour and wealth, suddenly felt like a gilded cage, trapping me in a nightmare of my own making. I remember staring at my reflection in the mirror, a stranger staring back. The carefully constructed facade of a successful businesswoman, the confident, independent woman I had worked so hard to become, shattered into a million pieces. All that remained was a raw, vulnerable core, exposed and bleeding. The wedding went on, a grotesque parody of joy and celebration. I watched from a distance, a ghost haunting their festivities. I saw Daniel and Bianca exchanging vows, their faces radiant with happiness, oblivious to the devastation they had wrought. I saw their friends and family raising toasts, celebrating their union, completely unaware of the foundation of lies and deceit upon which it was built. Every laugh, every smile, every stolen kiss felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to scream to expose them, to tear down their charade and reveal the ugly truth beneath. But I held back. Something inside me, a primal instinct for survival, told me to bide my time, to gather my strength, to plan my revenge. I forced myself to smile, to congratulate them, to play the part of the supportive sister, all the while seething with rage and plotting my next move. The days that followed were a blur of frantic activity. I contacted lawyers, forensic accountants, anyone who could help me untangle the web of deceit Daniel had so carefully spun. The news was grim. The money was gone, siphoned off into offshore accounts, laundered through shell corporations, leaving a trail so convoluted it seemed impossible to follow. The legal fees alone were astronomical, threatening to bankrupt what little remained of my own finances. Sleepless nights became the norm, my mind racing, replaying every conversation, every interaction with Daniel, searching for clues I had missed, red flags I had ignored. The weight of the injustice pressed down on me, suffocating me, threatening to crush me completely. My business, the one thing I had poured my heart and soul into, began to suffer. I couldn't focus, couldn't make decisions, couldn't shake the feeling that everything I had worked for was about to crumble around me. I had to tell my employees what was going on, the people who relied on me, and the shame was almost unbearable. They were understanding, supportive, even offering to help in any way they could. But I knew that their livelihoods were also at stake, that if my business failed, they would suffer the consequences as well. Desperate, I tried to reason with Daniel, to appeal to his sense of decency, to remind him of the bond we once shared. I begged him to return the money, to undo the damage he had caused. He refused, his voice cold and dismissive. He said it was my fault for being so naive, for trusting him so blindly. He said I was a fool if I thought I could ever get the money back. He even threatened me, warning me to drop the matter, to move on with my life or face the consequences. His words were like a slap in the face, a final confirmation that the brother I had once loved was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating stranger. Bianca, too, revealed her true colors. She called me, her voice dripping with venom, accusing me of trying to ruin their happiness. She said I was jealous of their wealth and success, that I couldn't stand to see them happy. She warned me to stay away from them, to leave them alone, or she would make my life a living hell. The betrayal cut deep. I had considered her a friend, a confidant, a sister. Now I saw her for what she truly was, a manipulative, greedy woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted. The walls were closing in. I felt isolated, alone, surrounded by enemies on all sides. The stress was taking its toll. I lost weight, my hair started to fall out, dark circles formed under my eyes. I was a shadow of my former self, consumed by anger, resentment, and a burning desire for revenge. I considered giving up, of just walking away and starting over somewhere else. But I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them get away with what they had done. I owed it to my parents, to myself, to fight back, to expose their lies, and to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The silence was deafening, broken only by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. But inside me, a hurricane. They raised their glasses, toasting to my downfall, their laughter echoing across the manicured lawn. The champagne they were drinking, paid for with my tears, with my future. I stood there, a ghost in my own life, the salt spray mirroring the devastation in my soul, knowing that the life I had painstakingly built had just crumbled to ash. They thought they had won. They were wrong. They were wrong. The salt spray stung my face, each drop a tiny reminder of the ocean of tears I had shed. The laughter continued, a mocking soundtrack to my despair. I wanted to disappear, to sink beneath the waves and let the cold, dark water swallow me whole. This wasn't just about the money, it was about the betrayal, the callous disregard for my feelings, the complete and utter destruction of the family I thought we were. My parents would be devastated. The realization hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. They had worked so hard, sacrificed so much, all to provide a secure future for their children. And Daniel had squandered it all, gambled it away on a frivolous wedding and a life of luxury, with no thought to the consequences. He had spat on their memory, desecrated their legacy, and left me to pick up the pieces. I walked away from the celebration, my head bowed, my shoulders slumped. I wandered aimlessly through the streets of Monaco, a ghost in a world of shimmering lights and extravagant displays of wealth. The city, once so alluring, now felt like a cruel taunt, a constant reminder of everything I had lost. I ended up on a deserted beach, the waves crashing against the shore, mirroring the turmoil within me. I sank to my knees in the sand, the grains cold and unforgiving against my skin. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to destroy something, anything, to release the pent-up rage that was consuming me. But I couldn't. I was too numb, too exhausted, too broken. I just sat there, staring out at the endless expanse of the sea, feeling utterly and completely alone. As the sun began to set, casting long, ominous shadows across the sand, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but a quiet acceptance of the situation, a surrender to the reality of my circumstances. I knew that I couldn't stay here, wallowing in self-pity, waiting for a miracle that would never come. I had to do something. I had to fight back. The first step was admitting the truth. I had been a fool. I had been naive, trusting, and blind to the warning signs. I had allowed Daniel to take advantage of me, to manipulate me, to steal my future. But I wouldn't let him define me. I wouldn't let him break me. I would use this pain, this anger, this betrayal as fuel. I would rise from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever before. As darkness enveloped the beach, I made a vow to myself, a solemn promise whispered into the wind. I would make them pay. I would expose their lies, reclaim what was rightfully mine, and ensure that they faced the consequences of their actions. It wouldn't be easy. It would take time, effort, and a level of ruthlessness I never knew I possessed. But I was willing to do whatever it took. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of purpose. The despair hadn't completely vanished, but it was overshadowed by a steely resolve. I started making calls, reaching out to contacts I hadn't spoken to in years, tapping into resources I never knew I had. I spent hours poring over documents, searching for loopholes, inconsistencies, anything that could give me an edge. I learned about offshore banking, money laundering, and the intricate web of shell corporations Daniel had used to hide his tracks. The more I learned, the angrier I became. But I channeled that anger into action, using it to drive me forward, to keep me focused on my goal. I realized that Daniel and Bianca's biggest weakness was their arrogance, their belief that they were untouchable. They had underestimated me, assuming that I would simply give up and disappear. They thought I was too weak, too naive to fight back. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I started to document everything, every conversation, every transaction, every interaction with Daniel and Bianca. I knew that evidence would be crucial in proving their guilt and reclaiming my inheritance. I hired a private investigator, a discreet and resourceful individual who specialized in financial fraud. He was expensive, but worth every penny. He uncovered a wealth of information about Daniel and Bianca's activities, their lavish spending habits, their secret affairs, and their shady business dealings. The picture that emerged was even more appalling than I had imagined. I discovered that Daniel had been systematically embezzling from the trust fund for years, siphoning off money to finance his extravagant lifestyle and to fund a series of failed business ventures. Bianca, it turned out, was no innocent bystander. She was a willing accomplice, a gold digger who had latched onto Daniel for his money and was actively involved in his schemes. They were a match made in hell, two greedy, soulless individuals who were perfectly willing to destroy anyone who stood in their way. The turning point came when I discovered something truly shocking, evidence that Daniel had not only stolen from me, but had also been responsible for some shady practices at my company when he was helping me manage the books years prior. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a chink in their armor. Their arrogance had blinded them, making them careless, overconfident. They had left a trail, a faint but discernible path that I could follow, and I intended to follow it all the way to their downfall. I began to formulate a plan, a meticulously crafted strategy to expose their crimes and bring them to justice. It wouldn't be quick or easy, but it would be devastating. I would use their own greed and arrogance against them, luring them into a trap they couldn't escape. I started by spreading rumors, subtle hints about my suspicions, carefully planted seeds of doubt designed to sow discord between Daniel and Bianca. I knew that their relationship was fragile, built on lies and mutual self-interest. It wouldn't take much to shatter it. I also began to discreetly contact their friends and associates, sharing my concerns about Daniel's financial dealings and Bianca's true motives. I played the part of the concerned sister, worried about her brother's well-being and desperate to protect him from a scheming gold digger. It was a calculated performance, designed to manipulate their inner circle and turn them against each other. It was time to play the game, and I was determined to win. I would become the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the scenes, orchestrating their downfall with cold, calculated precision. The silence was gone, replaced by the frantic ticking of a clock, counting down to the moment of my revenge. The hurricane inside me had subsided, replaced by a chilling calm, the eye of the storm where I could see clearly, think rationally, and plan my attack. I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist. I was ready. The game had changed. No more tears, no more despair. Now, it was about strategy, about using their arrogance against them. I became a ghost, observing their every move, documenting their every lie. I started small, focusing on Daniel's known weaknesses, his gambling addiction and his insatiable need for validation. I leaked information to a popular gossip blog about his frequent trips to Monte Carlo's casinos, hinting at the staggering amounts of money he was losing. The blog posts went viral, painting Daniel as a reckless playboy, squandering his family's fortune on a whim. The reaction was immediate. His friends and family started to distance themselves, questioning his judgment and his ability to manage his affairs. Bianca, predictably, was furious. She accused him of being careless and irresponsible, of jeopardizing their future. The cracks in their relationship were widening, just as I had hoped. Meanwhile, my private investigator was digging deeper into Bianca's past. He uncovered a string of failed relationships, each one ending with Bianca walking away with a hefty settlement or a lucrative business deal. She was a professional, a master manipulator who knew exactly how to play the game. He also discovered evidence of her involvement in a previous scheme, a fraudulent investment scheme that had left several investors financially ruined. The information was damning, but I needed more, something concrete that would tie her directly to Daniel's crimes. I decided to set a trap, a carefully orchestrated scenario designed to expose their true colors. I arranged a meeting with Daniel, under the guise of wanting to reconcile. I told him that I was willing to forgive him for what he had done, that I just wanted our family to be whole again. I laid it on thick, playing the part of the remorseful sister, desperate to mend our fractured bond. He was skeptical at first, but my flattery and apparent vulnerability slowly chipped away at his defenses. He agreed to meet me for dinner at a secluded restaurant overlooking the Mediterranean. I made sure to arrive early, planting hidden cameras throughout the dining room, capturing every angle of our conversation. I also hired a lip-reading expert, just in case. The dinner was excruciating. Daniel was smug and condescending, relishing in his perceived victory. He boasted about his wealth, his success, and his beautiful wife. He even had the audacity to offer me a small sum of money, a pathetic attempt to buy my silence. I smiled sweetly, pretending to be grateful while secretly recording every word. As the evening progressed, I steered the conversation towards the trust fund, subtly probing for details about his financial dealings. He grew increasingly agitated, his carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. He started to contradict himself, revealing inconsistencies in his story. He even made a few veiled threats, warning me to drop the matter and move on with my life. I played along, acting intimidated and defeated, all the while gathering the evidence I needed. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I mentioned Bianca's name. Daniel's face darkened, his eyes flashing with anger. He launched into a tirade, accusing her of being greedy and manipulative, of only being interested in his money. He revealed that she had been pressuring him to cut me out of the will completely, to ensure that she inherited everything. He even admitted that she had been the one who suggested siphoning off the money in the first place. It was all on tape. Every lie, every confession, every incriminating detail. I had them. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I handed over the evidence to my lawyers and the authorities, initiating a full-scale investigation into Daniel and Bianca's financial affairs. The news spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through Monaco's high society. Daniel and Bianca were ostracized, their reputations ruined, their lavish lifestyle threatened. They tried to deny the allegations, to discredit my evidence, but it was too late. The truth was out. I watched from a distance, a silent observer, as their world crumbled around them. The silence was gone, replaced by the deafening roar of justice, closing in on its prey. The investigation moved swiftly. Detectives raided Daniel's penthouse, seizing computers, documents, and even his beloved collection of vintage watches, all purchased with stolen funds. Bianca's villa was next, revealing a hidden vault filled with stacks of cash and jewelry. The media frenzy was relentless. Every newspaper, every website, every television channel was covering the story. Heir's heist, sibling betrayal, gold digger's downfall, the headlines screamed. Daniel and Bianca became pariahs overnight, their faces plastered across every screen, their names synonymous with greed and deceit. But I wasn't satisfied yet. I wanted to witness their downfall firsthand, to see the fear in their eyes when they realized that their empire was crumbling. I knew that Daniel was desperate. He was facing years in prison, financial ruin, and the complete loss of his social standing. He needed a way out, and he was running out of options. That's when I decided to offer him a lifeline, a false hope that would lead him straight into my trap. I contacted him through an intermediary, suggesting a private meeting, away from the prying eyes of the media. I told him that I had information that could help him, evidence that could exonerate him and implicate Bianca as the sole perpetrator of the crimes. It was a lie, of course, but he was desperate enough to believe it. He agreed to meet me at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Monaco, a desolate location far from the glitz and glamour of his former life. The warehouse was cold and damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and decay. It was the perfect setting for our final confrontation. I arrived early, making sure that the entire building was wired with cameras and microphones. I wanted to capture every word, every gesture, every flicker of emotion on their faces. I wanted to document their humiliation for posterity. When Daniel arrived, he looked haggard and defeated. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. He had aged 10 years in a matter of weeks. He was alone. Bianca apparently was no longer part of his inner circle. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I know you're behind this, you're trying to destroy me," I smiled. "Destroy you, Daniel? I'm just trying to help. I know you're not a bad person." "You just made a few mistakes," he scoffed. "Mistakes? I'm facing prison time, redacted. My life is over." "Not necessarily," I said, my voice low and conspiratorial. "I have evidence that could clear your name, evidence that proves Bianca was the mastermind behind everything." His eyes widened. "What kind of evidence?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a file. "Documents, emails, bank statements, everything you need to prove your innocence." I slid the file across the table towards him. He hesitated, then snatched it up, eagerly scanning the contents. As he read, his face began to transform. Hope flickered in his eyes, replacing the despair. This could actually work," he said, his voice trembling. "But why are you doing this? Why would you help me after everything I've done?" I leaned forward, my eyes locking with his. "Because, Daniel, I believe in justice, and I believe that everyone deserves a second chance." He looked at me, searching for any sign of deception. But all he saw was sincerity. He was so blinded by desperation that he couldn't see the trap closing around him. "There's just one thing you need to do for me," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You need to testify against Bianca. You need to tell the authorities everything you know about her schemes. You need to expose her for the manipulative, greedy redacted she is." He hesitated again. I don't know," he stammered. "She'll never forgive me." "Forgive you?" I said, my voice hardening. "She's already destroyed you, Daniel. She's used you, manipulated you, and left you to take the fall. Don't you see? She doesn't care about you. She never did." My words hit him like a physical blow. He slumped back in his chair, his face etched with pain. He knew I was right. He had been a fool, a puppet in Bianca's game. "Okay," he said, his voice barely audible. "Okay, I'll do it. I'll testify against her." I smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Good, you're making the right decision." I reached into my bag again and pulled out a USB drive. "This contains all the information you need to prepare your testimony. Study it carefully. Make sure you know every detail." He took the USB drive, his hand trembling. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." "Don't thank me yet, Daniel," I said, my voice turning cold. "The real test is yet to come." As he turned to leave, I stopped him. "And Daniel," I said, my voice dripping with venom, "one more thing. The evidence I gave you, it's all fake. Every document, every email, every bank statement, it's all a fabrication. But don't worry, the authorities already have the real evidence. The evidence that will send both you and Bianca to prison for a very long time." His face drained of color. He stared at me, his eyes wide with horror. You set me up," he stammered. But why?" I leaned in close, my voice a chilling whisper. "Because, Daniel, you deserve it. You stole from me, you betrayed my family, and you destroyed my life. Now it's my turn to return the favor." As the realization of what I had done washed over him, a primal scream escaped his lips. He lunged at me, his eyes filled with rage, his hands outstretched, ready to unleash violence. But before he could reach me, the doors of the warehouse burst open, and a team of police officers swarmed inside, surrounding him, weapons drawn. Daniel last name, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit a crime. As they dragged him away, kicking and screaming, he looked back at me, his eyes filled with hatred. But all I felt was satisfaction. The trap had been sprung, and Daniel had walked right into it. The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with anticipation. Daniel, pale and gaunt, sat beside his lawyer, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Bianca, ever the performer, sat ramrod straight, radiating an icy defiance that I knew was a facade. The prosecution laid out their case, meticulously presenting the evidence of Daniel and Bianca's crimes. The fake companies, the offshore accounts, the siphon funds, it was all there in black and white. Daniel's testimony, though riddled with self-serving lies, painted Bianca as the mastermind. He claimed he was merely a pawn in her game, a victim of her manipulative schemes. Bianca, in turn, vehemently denied everything. She portrayed herself as an innocent bystander, a loving wife who had been betrayed by her husband's greed and incompetence. But the jury wasn't buying it. They saw through her carefully crafted lies, recognizing her for the cold, calculating redacted she truly was. The trial lasted for weeks, each day bringing new revelations and deepening the sense of dread hanging over Daniel and Bianca. I sat in the gallery, a silent observer, watching as their lives unraveled before my eyes. The turning point came when my lawyer presented the recordings from the warehouse. Daniel's confession, his desperate plea for help, his admission of guilt, it was all there, undeniable and irrefutable. Bianca's carefully constructed defense crumbled, her mask of innocence shattered. The jury deliberated for only a few hours. When they returned, the foreman read the verdict, guilty on all counts. Daniel and Bianca were sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Their assets were seized. Their reputations were ruined. Their lavish lifestyle was over. As the bailiffs led them away, I caught Bianca's eye. For a brief moment, the icy defiance melted away, replaced by a raw, unadulterated hatred that sent a chill down my spine. But I didn't flinch. I simply smiled. The fallout was swift and brutal. Daniel and Bianca were ostracized by their former friends and associates. Their names became synonymous with scandal and disgrace. The media hounded them relentlessly, dissecting every detail of their lives, exposing their darkest secrets. Their families disowned them, severing all ties. They were completely alone, stripped of their wealth, their power, and their dignity. I watched from a distance, a silent observer, as their world crumbled around them. I saw Daniel descend into despair, consumed by regret and self-pity. I saw Bianca rage against her fate, blaming everyone but herself for her downfall. They had become cautionary tales, warnings to others who dared to cross the line. Justice had been served, my family's honor had been restored, and I had finally found peace. I walked away from the courtroom, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight that had been crushing me for so long had finally lifted. The silence was gone, replaced by the gentle hum of contentment. I had done what I had to do. I had avenged my family. I had reclaimed my life. Looking back, I don't regret a single thing. Some might say that revenge is a dish best served cold. Others might argue that it's a destructive force that consumes the avenger. But for me, revenge wasn't about hatred or bitterness. It was about survival. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen from me. It was about standing up for myself and my family. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.